Hello everyone and welcome back to Who's He at the Movies. And on this episode I'm going to be looking at one of my favourite sci-fi action films, Predator. But before I start to delve a bit deeper, a quick bit of personal history with this film. When Predator was released in the UK in 1988, I was at that time an avid cinema goer. I would practically travel to Leicester Square in London's glittering West End every week to see a film. And two films I was eager to see in 1988 were Predator and RoboCop. Now, recent internet searches contradict my version of events here, but my recollection is that in the UK, RoboCop was released in cinemas after Predator. So after seeing Predator at the cinema, the following week I made my pilgrimage to Leicester Square and saw the big sign above the Odeon cinema doors for RoboCop, and I duly purchased my tickets. I then went and got something to eat and headed back to the cinema. I must add that I hadn't actually looked at my cinema tickets at this point. The Odeon was only showing one film, so I just had to make sure that I got back for the right cinema showing time. Anyway, I settled down to watch the trailers for the upcoming films, and then a trailer for RoboCop started. I turned to my then girlfriend, who looked equally as puzzled as me. Why were they showing a trailer for a film that we had just bought tickets to see? Well, using the light from the cinema screen, I checked our tickets. They said Predator. It turned out that the cinema owners had decided to replace the Predator signs above the doors with the RoboCop signs a day early. So completely by accident, I ended up seeing Predator twice. And did I care? Not one bit, as I love this film. I've watched Predator time and time again since 1988 and I never get bored with it. It's practically got everything you would want from an action film, particularly an action film from the 1980s. One-liners, over-the-top action, a memorable monster and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I cannot overstate just how big a star Arnold was back in the 1980s. He was guaranteed big box office for Hollywood, and while I think Commando is probably the most Schwarzenegger will ever be, Predator is for me his best film, and it's also peak Arnold. Now, I'm sure that you all know the plot of this film by now. Alien hunter lands in the South American jungle for some sport. Dutch Schaefer, played by Schwarzenegger, and his crack commando team also arrive in the same jungle on a rescue mission, and the two collide in a hail of bullets and machismo as Dutch's team is picked off one by the Predator until he is the last man standing. And that is pretty much all you need to know. If you've never seen Predator, well, please don't expect Shakespeare. This is a good old-fashioned dumb 80s action movie. It's full of cheesy quips such as "I ain't got time to bleed" or "if it bleeds, we can kill it." And of course the most macho mid-air arm wrestle ever committed to celluloid. You just leave your brain at the door and have some fun. It's that simple. And well, that was my first reaction back in 1988. But having seen Predator on the big screen and multiple times on the small screen, Predator is a film you have to see on the big screen. But not for its cinematography, it's for the sound. This film is incredibly noisy, and when I watched this in the cinema, I could feel the room shake. The sound of Blaine's minigun, more on that later, and the rumble every time a scene cut to Predator vision. It was fantastic. Now, don't get me wrong, if you have a decent sound system at home, you will probably get the same effects, but it just won't beat that cinema experience. Another thing I like about Predator is that for an 80s action film, it has a couple of decent jump scares. Again, the use of sound enhanced this, but some of the imagery on occasion jumps into horror territory, which on first watch, I wasn't really expecting. But this is one of the many reasons I love this film. I think it's a blend of genres, which perhaps on paper would seem a bit silly, but it works. This paper-thin story only works due to the director, John McTiernan. Predator was only the second film he directed, the first being Nomads, starring Pierce Brosnan. And of course, McTiernan also directed another box office smash in 1988, Die Hard. With his eye for over-the-top action sequences and in the end selected the brilliant and much missed Stan Winston to create the now iconic Predator, he managed to make this and the actors gel to form a good solid action film. Which leads me to one of the best scenes in the film, the jungle shootout. There is a point in the film where the commando team blindly fire their weapons into the jungle at the direction of the invisible predator. It's just a cacophony. With the amazing sound effect for the minigun cutting over all the other gunfire, this was the scene at the cinema that made the audience gasp when it was over. I've encountered very few instances of cinema audiences reacting to a film, but I think the loudness, the way the scene was cut and the imagery of that firepower, it literally took people's breath away. But that minigun, or Old Painless though, well, ridiculous that someone was carrying that around on their back with what seems to be limitless ammunition. The sight of it decimating the jungle was, and still is, a sight to behold. But while being a cool scene, it does actually move the plot along. For all their weaponry, they hit precisely nothing. They were all powerless and totally outmatched by the Predator's instinct and far superior technology. But while in this movie certainly we don't really know anything about the Predator or the Yautja as they were named later in the movie sequels and written media, what we do learn about them is that while they hunt for sport, they will only target you if you are armed. It just adds a little twist to the species. It's not a mindless killer. It does have some form of moral code. But unfortunately, this isn't the type of movie to delve any deeper into their lore, but it is a welcome addition nonetheless. But while I'm on the subject of the Predator, some of you may not know that the creature we are all familiar with now didn't originally look like that at all. In fact, the original man in the suit was another action star trying to hit the big time, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Van Damme was cast they wanted him to use his martial arts skills and have the Predator stalk in the jungle like a ninja assassin. However, with Van Damme being 5'9", he wasn't physically imposing enough when standing next to Schwarzenegger and other cast members such as Carl Weathers and Jesse Ventura. With the original costume design also being very awkward and hot to move around in, the crew quickly realised that it wasn't working. Legend also has it that Van Damme was also disgruntled that his face would not be seen on screen, so the decision to scrap the creature design, and him, was the right one. And so in steps the 7'2" actor Kevin Peter Hall and Stan Winston with his incredible design for the Predator that we all know and love. It now transpires that director James Cameron had a hand in the new design for the Predator. The story goes, while he and Stan Winston were on a flight together, Cameron suggested incorporating mandibles into the creature's design, as well he'd never seen that element used before. Winston took Cameron's idea on board and hey presto, the iconic Predator was born. And in one of the film's most iconic lines when the Predator's face is revealed, it helps to seal its legendary status. But I do wonder if this film would be so fondly remembered now if the original creature design had worked. Would we have seen any sequels? Would this world be expanded upon in comics and computer games? Well, I don't think it would. Without that iconic creature design, this would have been another run-of-the-mill sci-fi action film which, well, would probably been best remembered as a so-so vehicle for Schwarzenegger. There are so many other stories surrounding this film as well, like the stars all getting up before each other to work out in order to out-buff one another on set, and a bodyguard hired for actor Sonny Landham. Sonny Landham was a very volatile man who was well known for causing much disruption on film sets. But the bodyguard hired for Landham wasn't to protect him, it was to protect the cast from him. That's how dangerous the man was. The stories, myths and legends surrounding this film are just as entertaining as the film itself. Now, we have had many numerous Predator sequels and spin-offs since 1988, and while I've yet to see the latest in the series, Predator Badlands, out of all the sequels I've seen, Predator 2 and Prey are pretty damn good as well. Though the less said about the Alien vs Predator films, the better. However, if I was to really recommend a sequel to Predator, try and track down the comic book series Predator Concrete Jungle. It's pretty much a straight sequel to the film and which Predator 2 based its plot on. But lastly, and just to illustrate how much of a fan I am of Predator, back in the 80s and 90s I was a keen model maker. I was still living with my parents then and my bedroom was adorned with model aircraft and military dioramas. And when I ran out of those to make, I switched to film and TV models. I read a model making magazine which announced that a Predator vinyl kit was being released in the UK, but it had a very limited release of only 120. But I had to have one. So I eventually found out that a model shop in Battersea, southwest London, were receiving a few of them and I went there on the day of release and managed to get one. I paid £80 for the privilege. Back then it was a lot of money for a model kit and would be worth a lot more had I not built it. But what's the point in that? Model kits are for building, and out of all the models I built all those years ago, it's the only one I still have. I dare say I will do a better job of painting it now, but it's like a time capsule. It reflects my model making skills at the time and also my love for the Predator movie. Oh, and in case you were wondering, I did see RoboCop the following week. Bye for now.